Hi, Professor. I'm here for my 4 o'clock tutorial. Remember, you were going to explain to me the different treaties making up the European Union.
Yes, I do. But how about this week I ask the questions?
Okay, Professor, but I can't guarantee that I will know the answers.
That's okay, James. If you knew everything about the EU, you would not have come to my tutorials, so don't worry about that. How about you tell me why the Lisbon Treaty was adopted?
Well, I guess fundamentally the Lisbon Treaty, or Reform Treaty as it is also known, was adopted to deal with the issue of enlargement.
So you mean it was adopted to allow for further enlargement?
No, that is not what I meant. At the time of the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty, the then 27 member state union was operating on the basis of a set of rules and institutional structures developed to allow integration between a much smaller number of member states. This was hindering the union from advancing and carrying out its aims, and so the Lisbon Treaty was adopted to adapt the structure of the organisation so as to be able to deal with a union soon to be made up of 28 member states.
Good, James. So what type of reform did the treaty put in place?
Well, let's see. It sought to introduce greater efficiency into the decision-making process at council level, to promote the democratic nature of the European Union, and to promote greater coherence as regards the EU's foreign policy. Whether it likes it or not, the EU represents the world's largest trading bloc, and so other non-EU countries have to be able to deal with it. As Henry Kissinger famously said, "When I want to talk to Europe, I don't know who to call," or words to that effect.
Yes, indeed, although many say Kissinger never actually said that and was more interested in seeing Europe divided rather than united. But okay, I take your point. Can you give me some detail?
What do you mean?
Can you give me an example of some specific provisions of the Lisbon Treaty achieving the general aims you just referred to?
Oh, okay, I understand. Well, let's see. Did the Lisbon Treaty create the right for member states to leave the European Union?
Well, it did, but I don't see how that supports the points you were making earlier. While I suppose by allowing member states to leave, it does not indirectly promote the democratic nature of the Union, as member states with an anti-EU majority will now be able to leave, although I suspect member states were always able to leave if they wanted. I was looking more for direct examples in support of your previous statement. How, for example, has the treaty made the EU more democratic?
Well, the Lisbon Treaty extended the role of the European Parliament so that in most areas, for example immigration, energy, environment, consumer protection, the Parliament has an equal role as regards the adoption of legislation under the ordinary legislative procedure. The Parliament and the Council working together now adopt the vast majority of laws enjoying equal powers. As the European Parliament is elected by EU citizens, any increase in the Parliament's powers directly makes the EU more democratic.
Good. Any other examples?
It extended or gave the national member state parliaments a greater role in the EU legislative process, but I'm not sure how. Oh, and yes, there was also the European Citizens Initiative. I think it is referred to as ECI, extending the role played by EU citizens, but I don't really know how that works.
Okay. Under Article 10.3 of the TEU, citizens are now said to have a right to participate in the democratic life of the Union. In practical terms, this means that if over 1 million citizens from different member states get together, they can request the Commission to introduce a legislative proposal to be adopted by the Council and the Parliament acting together. However, it remains to be seen how effective this provision will actually be.
And how has the role of the national parliaments been extended?
Good question. This has occurred in 3 main ways. First, the national parliaments have been given increased information rights in the legislative process at EU level. For example, the right to receive legislative proposals, the minutes of meetings, and that type of thing. Second, if after receiving information concerning a legislative proposal, the national parliaments consider the EU is violating the subsidiary principle, then they may challenge the initiative. Thirdly, the national parliaments are allowed to scrutinise or oversee EU facts in the area of freedom, security and justice, referred to as FSJ. By the way, what do I mean when I speak of subsidiarity?
Well, it means that in areas not falling within the exclusive competence of the EU can only act if it can show that the measure cannot be achieved by action at member state, regional level or local level.
Good, James. I can see that you've been studying.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, but don't get too carried away. I think it might be a good idea if you were to write a 5-page essay on the reforms introduced by the Lisbon Treaty. Something concise but informative, and no padding or the blah 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 you're sometimes tempted to use.
Okay, when do you want it for?
Next week. When did you think? Next year?
No, it's just that I was thinking of going down to London on the weekend to see some friends and maybe stay an extra day or two.
Do whatever you want, James. You're a big boy now. Just have that essay on my desk in 7 days' time if you want to maintain your average, okay?
Okay, Professor, thanks. See you next week.